Welcome to the Lambton College International Graduate Services and Support Center, your dedicated resource for navigating life after graduation. We know the journey can be complex, from understanding immigration processes to making career decisions and expanding your professional network. That's why we're here, to simplify these challenges and support your transition into Canadian life. At the International Graduate Services and Support Center, our mission extends beyond your academic achievements. We are here to facilitate your successful integration into the Canadian workforce and society. From career counseling to workshops on Canadian workplace culture and immigration support, our services are tailored to meet the unique needs of international graduates. We're committed to empowering you with the tools and knowledge necessary for success. Embrace the opportunity to connect with fellow graduates and professionals through our networking events and stay informed with our comprehensive webinars covering a range of topics crucial for your postgraduate success. Remember, the path to achieving your aspirations is a journey we undertake together. Ready to take the next step? Visit our website and join our supportive community. Remember to follow us on Instagram and on LinkedIn for upcoming immigration webinars, networking events, and much more. Together, let's make your postgraduate journey a success.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Cristina Yiguren, and I'm the coordinator of International Graduate Services and Support Center. Today, we're going to have an amazing webinar. I will talk about it in a moment, but I hope you are all safe and warm after yesterday's storm. This is a perfect day for a webinar, so let's get this started. I want to remind you that we are recording this webinar so that you can watch it again later on our YouTube channel. And we're also going to get a recording tomorrow morning. And this recording will also include some links with discounts that we will discuss later in a moment. Please follow us on our social media accounts so you won't miss any of our upcoming events. This month, we will have an event, a very interesting one, about Q&A for immigration. You are requested to send your questions in advance so that we can try to have as much questions as we can and go through all of them if possible. And we're also going to have another webinar more related to cover letters and resumes, so stay tuned and you won't miss those events. This center is dedicated to assisting you, our international graduates, as you seek employment and settle into Canadian life following graduation. Our international graduates have access to immigration, career advice, and networking events. Today, we're going to discuss an amazing topic. If you're uncertain about your LinkedIn, what to add, what not to add, and especially how can you connect with other people, you are in the right place because we got a master with us. We got a real expert and an icon in personal branding, and our esteemed speaker is Merryn Roberts-Huntley, as a top-rated career coach and the author of Made to Hire, which is an amazing book. I recommend you, if you don't have it, go and try to look for it. You will get lots of tips there. She will help us understand better how to use LinkedIn to land our dream job and how to connect with people who are in our same field, or somehow we can be connected with our interests. So I'm very excited today. It's been great to have you, Merryn. It was amazing since the first time I spoke with her. We had this connection, and you will understand why. She's also an international student. She has been through lots of processes that we're all going through. She has been interviewing another language. She totally understands what we are doing, what to do, what not to do, what we're going through. So it's amazing to have you here, Merryn. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to remind you to keep your questions in the chat. I'm sorry, in the Q&A, and I will leave the chat only for giving you some information in a moment. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. I want to pass it over to you, Merryn.
Thank you so much, Christina. What a wonderful welcome. And thank you, everyone, for being part of this webinar with us today. I'm going to pull up my slides and we will get going because there's a lot that we want to do in this hour together. So thank you for making time. Okay, so our focus today is talking about LinkedIn, and really what we're trying to do here is help you learn how to use LinkedIn to land your next job, hopefully your dream job. So Let me just adjust my slides here real quick. And there we go. Okay, perfect. So some goals for us for today. So I want to really help you maximize your LinkedIn profile. If you're going to be on LinkedIn, I want to show you how to do it well, how to do it in a way that's really going to help you get from where you are now to that next step. I also really want to build your confidence using LinkedIn. Christina and I were talking before the webinar, and it can feel really overwhelming when people say to you, how's your LinkedIn profile? Or do you have a LinkedIn profile? And especially if you come from a country where LinkedIn isn't a popular tool, I want to help you know how to spend your time on LinkedIn and really help you feel more confident with how to use it as part of your job search. And then also, the final thing is really understand how LinkedIn and how using this tool fits into your bigger job search. So we're going to look at all of that today. A couple minutes on my background so that you can understand the perspective that I'm coming from. I was actually born in England and moved to Canada when I was a kid, spent about 20 years living in Canada, and then now live in America. So I've been in the US for about 20 years as well. I did my undergraduate degree at McGill University, and my first job out of college was working in Major League Soccer. So if there are any soccer fans out there, I feel you. And from there, I went on to work for Solomon Sports. I actually was in Toronto at the time, and that was a great experience. So worked for about 4 or 5 years before I moved to the US to get my graduate degree. I have an MBA from the University of Oregon, and I had a dream in moving here to end up at Nike, and I did do that. Was very fortunate to spend 5 years after grad school working for Nike, and then went on to start my own consulting firm, doing marketing consulting, mainly for sports companies. And when I started doing that, I was approached by the University of Oregon to be an instructor in their business school. And I said to the University of Oregon, I'd be honored to teach students about marketing products and services. But I think there's something else I'd like to also focus on, and that is helping students make that transition from spending so much money on a degree to actually transitioning it to how do I use that education, and how do I use all the skills I've developed to get a job? And so I developed a workshop series when I started teaching at the University of Oregon around how to land your dream job, which led me to write my book, Made to Hire, and that led me to start my coaching business. And I've been doing this for 6 years now. So again, I'm really honored to be here today because this is truly a passion of mine, helping people make that transition from where they are now to that next goal that they want to accomplish. And when Christina reached out to me and asked me if I'd be willing to talk to alumni of Lambton College, I said absolutely. Obviously, being Canadian myself and a university instructor myself, I have a sweet spot for this sort of an audience. So thank you guys again for being here. And then just a couple other personal notes so that you guys hopefully feel comfortable with me. When we get to the Q&A, I'd like you to be able to ask whatever questions you want. And I do feel like sharing a little bit more about myself helps people see me not just as this serious college instructor and career coach. Probably like some of you, I have kids, I have a husband, I have 2 dogs, I have a whole life outside of work. And then another kind of fun fact that is entertaining to some people is I was Mrs. Oregon a couple of years ago. So just a fun part of my story. Okay.
Sorry for interrupting you. That's all great to hearing and knowing better yourself. Just a thing, we're looking right now at your slides and also the notes. I don't know if you can try to share it again so we can get the full screen there.
Sorry. Is that better?
Yes, way better. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's dive in. So I'm planning to talk for about 45 minutes, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Okay, so zooming out for a second here. This is a page from my book, and this is what I always will challenge people with when they come to me and they say, Merryn, I don't know what to do. I've applied for 70 jobs and nobody's calling me. I don't understand why this is happening. And I'll say to them, well, that's great, but what else have you done? And I show you this slide because I want to challenge you to think about, how are you approaching your job search? Are you just going straight to step 4 here, which is submitting your application? Or are you actually really looking at that job and going after that job and thinking about, how are all the ways that I can stand out as a candidate for that job? And we all know that it's more challenging when you're living somewhere that you weren't born, that you're not, totally networked from birth, right? As an international student or an international graduate, it's more challenging making that transition into work after college, or even making that step up once you're in an organization. So I want to show you this slide to really kind of challenge you to think about, there are many steps to landing that dream job. We're going to focus today on steps 1 and 2. We're going to focus starting on step 1 because your brand is one of the main ways that it comes across when you're job searching is on LinkedIn. And so how you portray your brand is very important. When I say your brand, I mean you, your name, how you show up online. Okay, so I always say to people, LinkedIn is like your own personal billboard, right? You think about driving down the highway and the billboards that you notice, or the ones that you don't even realize are there. That's what happens to a lot of people on LinkedIn, is maybe they have a profile up, but it's not done well and it's just not getting the attention that they deserve. So that's what I want to help you with today. There are really 2 problems, right, that are happening. Is 95% of profiles aren't done well. And then the second problem is, even when someone's profile is great, they don't necessarily know what to do with it. So we're going to tackle both of those things today. And I want to give you some really actionable tips that after this workshop, you can go back and make changes to your profile. Whatever feels right to you from here, from this session, you can go and make those changes. It'll be really easy to do. So I'm going to break down what I'm calling 10 ways that you can use LinkedIn really to help you land that next job. So we'll talk about pictures. We'll talk about your headline. This will all make more sense in a minute. I have a slide or 2 on each of these things. We'll talk about how you're positioning yourself. Talk about the about section, using keywords on LinkedIn, the work experience section, what I call small yet powerful indicators. So we'll talk about a couple little things on LinkedIn that I'd like you to be aware of. We'll also talk about the recommendations section at the bottom of your profile on LinkedIn. Activity. So how active are you being with your profile? And then the final thing we'll talk about is networking, and we'll do a bit of a longer section on networking. These first 9 things we'll cover pretty quickly. And so feel free to take notes or jot down questions that you might have. I'm also happy to share my slides, and I know Christina said she'll send out this recording. Okay, so let's start with pictures, right? So when you pull up your profile, there are 2 pictures there representing you. There's your headshot in that circle, and there's that background image behind your head. And I find that pretty often I actually see that background image blank, and LinkedIn will just put a default graphic there if you choose not to put an image there. And so I want to encourage you to really think about what you're putting in each of those locations, right? So with that headshot, choose a professional headshot. It doesn't need to be taken by a professional photographer. It can simply be taken on your phone or someone else's phone. But ideally, take it against a white wall, just like this example is showing. You don't want a bunch of busy things happening in the background behind your head that could be distracting. Also think about the expression that you have in the image, right? So does it really represent you? Is it a nice professional version of you, right? So those are kind of some of the nuances there. This happens to be a black and white image. I'm not necessarily suggesting that. This is just a nice image. Color is great. Really, it's just putting forth a really strong version of your professional self in that image. And then the background image is actually really important. And I think people don't really see the value and the importance of that image. So that image should quickly identify what your professional expertise and professional passion is. So when somebody looks at it, they don't even necessarily have to read what's happening below. They get it. So this guy, for example, his expertise is the marketing of the snow sports industry. So things like X Games, that sort of stuff. That's this guy's expertise. So him showing a snowy mountain, that makes a lot of sense for him. So really just thinking about and being very intentional about what you put there in that background. I have a couple sites I'm going to list on here for you that are places that you can go to look for inspiration for images that are free images. You can also use Google as well. Sometimes people will say to me, I just don't know what to put there. Well, what I would start with is type into your browser just keywords that represent what you do for work and look at the images that come up. And you're going to notice some feel more like you and some really don't connect with you. And then you can also look at people in your network who have similar backgrounds to get some inspiration for the sort of images that they're using. Next thing I want to talk about, number 2, is your headline. So right below your pictures, that's the next thing that someone's going to see. LinkedIn's going to default your headline to be your current or most recent job title. So a lot of times you'll see something pretty, I was going to say boring, pretty flat, right? Just a job title there, sales manager for whatever the company is. I want to challenge you to think about the fact that you are much more than just your current job title, right? And this example here of Deborah Blakewood is showing us that, right? So she's describing herself as a project manager, a senior business analyst. She has a master's degree in engineering management, and she's worked for a pretty impressive list of companies over the course of her career. So I want you to think about how can you use that space to position yourself and, thinking about your degree, your professional expertise, perhaps companies that you've worked for, challenging yourself to look at yourself as more than just your current or previous role, and using slashes, whether it's a forward slash or a straight up and down slash, to separate the phrases is a really nice way to break that space up. So a strong headline is really important for your LinkedIn profile. And again, look at people in your network to get inspiration. And certainly you can look at mine too to get some inspiration. People often ask me this, well, Merryn, what do I do if I'm unemployed? Should I put that in my headline? And my answer is no. You definitely do not need to call out the fact that you're unemployed in your headline. And frankly, none of these things, none of these phrases in your headline are going to change whether or not you're employed or not. You're still just as great today as you were 6 months ago, perhaps when you were in your last job. All these statements are still true. So don't let the fact that if you are unemployed, don't let that affect your confidence or how you're positioning yourself on LinkedIn. The third thing I want to touch on is just overall, you being very clear with how you're positioning yourself. So when you think about it, the combination of your images and your headline really should instantly position you. When somebody looks at those things, they should get you. And if it takes too long to figure you out, there's an opportunity for you there to work on the images and work on the headline. Because this woman, for example, I get it right away, right? I get it that she works in the sports industry and frankly, and she works at Nike, right? So that's very clear to me. And we want your version of that. When you do a good job at positioning yourself in that space and the images and the headline, that makes somebody want to scroll. That makes them want to learn more about your profile. So what we're going to do now is talk about some of the other things that you can do that will help you stand out with your profile. The about section is the next one, right? So once you get below the headline, that's the next big thing that you're going to see there is your about section. LinkedIn is going to give you lots of space. They give you 2,600 characters of space, which is a ton. What I'm showing you here in this example is about 250 words. So this is a nice amount, a bit longer than this is fine. just be mindful of, they give you a ton of space. You don't need to fill it all. When somebody looks at your about section, if it feels like an essay, that can feel overwhelming and can feel like a turnoff to the reader. So I would say roughly this much information, maybe an additional paragraph or two would be plenty. The key here is this is your opportunity to tell your story in a nice, concise, yet compelling way. And I always encourage people to think about it using your headline first, right? So position yourself in your headline and then use your about section to do what I call a double click on the phrases that you outline in your headline, right? So if you talk about yourself as a senior marketer, you would want to mention that. If you talk about your background in brand or digital, you would want to mention that. And I like what this guy's done here up front. He describes his background as a senior marketing leader and a digital native. He talks about how many years of experience he has, 12 years of experience. He talks about a specialized degree that he has, and then he talks about some companies that he's worked for. So make it really clear here what your background is. Don't make somebody have to go fishing through your profile to understand you and to get that top line version of who you are. Okay, so moving along, number 5 on my list is using keywords. So when recruiters are searching on LinkedIn, keywords are a really important tool that they're using. It's just like when you submit a resume onto a job site and they're using applicant tracking software, they're using keywords there, right? So think about your profile and jobs that you're regularly seeing, the sort of words that are coming up based on your functional expertise, your industry, right? You're going to see certain words repeated regularly. Can those be incorporated into your profile in a way that's true, that makes sense, right? So is that experience that you have in your background? And if it is, you definitely want to weave that in. So I like this idea here that this guy has. He has a paragraph at the end of his about section where he lists his key skills and he has those keywords there. That's going to help him come up in higher in search results. And he also has them weaved throughout his profile. So be mindful of keywords and making sure that they are incorporated throughout your profile. And then I wanted to show you here, just as I mentioned a second ago, how recruiters are using keywords. I want to show you, if you're using the feature on LinkedIn that a lot of people like to use, which is the easy apply button, because a lot of people are searching for jobs on LinkedIn and then they click easy apply. I want to show you how keywords are influencing that. So this is a recruiter view on LinkedIn. So you can see here that what the recruiter is going to see in terms of who uses easy apply, they're going to see the headshot and they're going to see the headline. They're going to see what's called the critical match criteria. So they've entered in keywords that they're looking for applicants to have, and those are the people who are coming out, those who match those keywords. So again, if you think about your headline and the keywords in your profile, this matters a lot. This is going to help you get noticed by recruiters. Okay, we're powering through it, you guys. Number 6 here is looking at your work experience, right? So thinking about your profile, right? And scrolling down, we've passed the about section and now we're in the work experience section. So some things to notice here, and I like to kind of call out some differences here between LinkedIn and your resume, right? So LinkedIn is really special in that they give you the opportunity to do more. What do I mean by more? Well, you can actually include links to a website. You can include images that might represent work that you've done in the past. So that functionality is different than a typical resume, right? So you can tell a bit more of a story. Text-wise, I'm perfectly happy for the text here to be the same as what's on your resume. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. But the key is making sure that on your profile, you're explaining the details for every position that you had, and whenever possible, explaining the impact of what you did, not just what the job was, but how did it go? Are there any results that you can share? Hiring managers and recruiters are looking for that sort of information. Okay, number 7 is I want to touch on what I call 3 small yet powerful indicators that recruiters are looking at when they look at your profile. So the first one is how many connections you have. And this is tough, especially if you're newer to LinkedIn, right? Or if you didn't really, haven't been using this tool for years and years and been building lots of connections. But I do want to call this out because what LinkedIn does at the top of your profile, you might have noticed this, is they indicate how many connections you have. So 148, let's say. This guy has a few thousand. So what LinkedIn does is they indicate if you have more than 500, it simply says 500 plus at the top of your profile. And it might sound silly, but that 500 plus is an indicator of you being well networked. So whether you have 501 or 5,001, it's still going to be that same 500 plus at the top of your profile. So I want to set a goal for you to kind of get above that threshold because it just sends a signal that you're well networked. It's a small yet powerful signal that is something for you to work towards. And again, if you're newer to LinkedIn, this can take some time, but I encourage you, to reach out to people, you went to college with, people you've worked with, really like actually put effort each day or each week into adding connections, because there are probably a lot of people who are actually in your network who you haven't connected yet with on LinkedIn. And then I also love the group feature on LinkedIn, where you can look and see groups that might be kind of up your alley in terms of your industry or your functional expertise. And you can join groups with other like-minded people. And it's perfectly appropriate for you to send those people connection requests, commenting on the fact that you're both in the same group and it looks like you have similar backgrounds, something along those lines. Okay, the next small yet powerful indicator I want to call out on LinkedIn is your actual URL. So your web address for your LinkedIn profile. So what LinkedIn is going to do is LinkedIn is going to give you a whole bunch of numbers and letters after your name, right? But if you actually go in to your profile, I'll show you how to do it. This is a desktop view in the top right corner there. I can go in and I can edit my public profile and URL. And then if I click that, here's what I'm going to see. So I can actually change my URL to whatever I want it to be, right? So it was Merryn Roberts-Huntley 897ZYKLB, something crazy like that. And I can just change it to my name. And that's what I suggest, is just updating it to reflect your name. If you have a common name, certainly you can put a number or a couple numbers after your name to call that out. So again, just a small differentiator, but the reason to do this is it shows that you have comfort and kind of a savviness with using this tool. And again, as you're entering your next job search, whenever that happens, positioning yourself as somebody who's very comfortable on LinkedIn, comfortable with this sort of a platform is important. And so this is an indicator that shows that. Okay, one more thing, and that's a small yet powerful indicator on LinkedIn, is your contact info. So a couple things I want to call out here. That's at the top of your profile. And if you click on that, it's going to pull up this box. So a couple things here that I'm looking for when I look at somebody's contact info. So making sure it's up to date, obviously. Be careful if you're going to include a website. So sometimes I see websites on here that are somebody's passion project or side business, right? So I wouldn't be including that on LinkedIn. That would be something I would save for your Facebook or, something that's not professional social media. Also, I often see people putting their company website on here, and that's certainly fine. You also don't have to do that. So just be aware of that. And then your email address. This is actually an important one. So I wouldn't say I see this so much probably, with younger people, but I'm in my mid 40s and I see this often with people my age and older, which is they'll have an email address that really dates and ages them. They'll have like a Hotmail account, for example. And I'll usually say, I recommend having a more current email server, like Gmail is a very common and current email server. So just be aware of what the email account is that you're using. And, sometimes people will also have kind of goofy email addresses. And I would caution against that, certainly on a professional networking site and on your resume. And then consider whether or not you want to add a phone number. I don't have a phone number posted on my profile, and that's intentional. I don't want anybody calling me at any time. So if you have a phone number posted, just realize that that is making you accessible. So I would rather just have an email address there so that you can be prepared if somebody's going to call you about a position. Okay. Number 8, again, if we're scrolling down on your profile, this is going to be another important section, the recommendations section. And I often see this left blank, which is another reason why I want to call it out today. So the recommendations section is where people can write recommendations about you. And that's actually something that recruiters and hiring managers really look at. So what I suggest here is have 2 or 3 recommendations in there. You don't have to have a ton. 2 or 3 is great, but I'd love to see one of them be from the current year. So sometimes I'll look at someone's profile and their most recent recommendation is from 10 years ago, right? So it's tough to take that recommendation seriously. It's just been so long. And it also makes me wonder, has this person really been active on LinkedIn if they haven't had a recommendation written about them for that long? So consider that. It's very easy to get a recommendation from someone on LinkedIn. You can on your page or on their page, there are both ways to do this. You can ask for a recommendation. But I do want to encourage you to send whoever you're asking a recommendation for a personal email first, to ask them if it would be okay to send them a recommendation request through LinkedIn. I find it to be a little bit pushy. I've gotten recommendation requests from people on LinkedIn, and they never emailed me or asked me if I would be willing to do it. So it's a bit of a turnoff, just kind of using this tool without giving them a heads up. And then if you are going to ask them to write a recommendation, let them know what you're going after, what the next job is that you're interested in, and any skills that you're hoping that they highlight. There's another section right around here on your profile, your endorsements, and this is where people can endorse you for skills like sales or customer service or IT or whatever it may be. And that's great. If you want to get endorsements, I wouldn't spend a ton of time doing that. The 10 things that I've put in this presentation really are where I would emphasize putting your time if you want to work on your profile. You'll naturally get some endorsements as people will look at your profile and say, oh, so-and-so is good at this, or I want to endorse them for that. But that doesn't carry as much weight when you're job searching as these other things do. All right, number 9 is consistent activity, right? So if you have your profile and it's in a great place, you're feeling good about it, I'd love to encourage you to actually be active on LinkedIn. And so I want to kind of set some suggestions here around what activity looks like, because sometimes people will have a profile and they'll never use it. And then other times they'll use it, what I would say is probably too much. So the goal here is with your posts on LinkedIn is you want to put content out there that positions you as an expert, as somebody who is knowledgeable in your field of expertise, right? So that doesn't have to be you having, a huge opinion about something, but you can share news, you can share something that has recently happened. You can have an opinion about something exciting that's happened in your industry. I would just avoid being too controversial. One very safe thing you could do is in your industry, there's certainly thought leaders who are fun to follow on LinkedIn. And when they share news, resharing that can be a great way to share something that's relevant to your industry that everyone might not have seen yet, and give credit to whoever the author was. I say to people, at a maximum, posting once or twice a week, I'd say would be my guideline of don't go above that. And that would be if you're writing an original post or resharing someone else's content. more than that, and I feel like people are going to start to tune you out. And you certainly don't need to post that much. I'd say if you're going to be on LinkedIn and job searching, doing a post once a month probably is totally fine. You don't need to be worried about, oh, I have to post every day or every week. No, I wouldn't say that. I would encourage you to be engaging with other people's posts, though, by commenting or liking or sharing other people's posts. And certainly people who are in positions in companies that interest you, liking people's posts is a great way to get noticed. People are always looking at, when they post something, how many likes and comments is it getting? And they look at who likes and comments on their posts. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but that's a tactic that is a really great way to get you noticed, that I find is really underutilized with people on LinkedIn. Okay. Number 10, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, because I feel like steps 1 through 8 are really actionable, easy upgrades that you can make to your profile on your own. It might feel like a little bit much because I've gone through it quickly, but again, you'll be able to rewatch this and take from it what works for you. Number 9 is the advice on activity. And then number 10, we're going to talk here about how you can use LinkedIn for networking. And I really see kind of 2 things happening here. I see, people who aren't really using the tool and people who I think are doing a fantastic job. So I want to help you to be on this side. Okay. So going back to those 5 steps to land your dream job, how you're using LinkedIn to networking really falls into step 2. And when I encourage people, when they're searching for a job, when I encourage them to leverage their network, right, and use the people who they know to help them get that next job, LinkedIn is the number 1 way, the number 1 place that I tell people to do this. So all the updates that we just talked about you considering making to your profile, those will help you when you get to a place of wanting to use LinkedIn to network. So again, we talked about these kind of problems, right, of profiles not really necessarily being great, number 1. And number 2 is when your profile is great, not necessarily knowing what to do with it. And again, if you're newer to LinkedIn, it can feel overwhelming. So I want to give you some really easy steps to follow. I'm breaking it down into 2 categories, right? So what most people do and what I think you should do when we think about networking on LinkedIn. We're going to look at how to build connections and how to leverage recruiters and connections. So I get a lot of questions from people about recruiters. So I definitely wanted to hit on that in this workshop. Okay, so when we think about building connections on LinkedIn, what do most people do? They just send out invites, right? So I get a lot of invites on LinkedIn every day, actually, and it's just a notification that somebody has sent me a connection request. And that's what most people do. They just send out connection requests, lots of them. What do I think you should do? Well, I think you should use LinkedIn to identify your targets, and I'll explain that in a minute, and then actually go after them, right? So it's using LinkedIn much more intentionally for your networking. In order to identify your targets, you need to get really clear on 2 things, right? So what do I mean by targets, right? So ideally, what role are you interested in, right? So when you think about your next job, what are you trying to do? Is there a certain company you're interested in or kind of company? And what department are you interested in? And then when you think about that, within the company, we're then going to be able to actually get specific on people, right? So if you tell me that your dream company is Microsoft and you'd like to work in Microsoft in the sales department, we can then go onto LinkedIn and actually figure out who your people targets are. That's what I mean when I say targets, is your people targets. Go back to my 5 steps, right? So most people just go and apply online, and that's all they do. They send out a resume and they wait and they wonder why they're not getting called. And what I always tell my students and my clients is, if you were playing darts, would you just have 1 dart and throw it at the dartboard and think that you're going to hit the target? No, you need a few darts, right? Like you need a handful of darts and you want to throw several darts to hit that target. And this is an example of if you're applying for a job, just applying online isn't enough. I want to encourage you to actually try to get noticed by the people who are making the decision. That's a huge way that's going to help you stand out. So let's talk about this more. So let's say that Intel is my target, right? So I can go onto LinkedIn and I can type in Intel and it's going to show me people, and I can filter this all sorts of ways, right? So you're just going to need to spend some time playing on LinkedIn with the search functionality. It's fantastic. And you can search by location, you can search by seniority, all sorts of search functionality here, but you can actually identify who would be the actual people who you would be wanting to reach out to on LinkedIn who are connected to a job that is interesting to you, right? So what I like to do is start an Excel spreadsheet, and that's where I can track my targets. So I would just have one column that is the company, the next column is the actual the person within the organization and what their job title is, and then the next column would be have I reached out to them? What have I done? Has there been any communication? And that's how I would keep track of it. And so I would encourage you not to just send out an invite or a connection request to that person. Instead, I would include a note. LinkedIn gives you that option to include a note when you send out a connection request. And here's the view of it. I just want to make sure you're aware of this functionality on LinkedIn. So if you're on desktop, it will prompt you. It will say, do you want to add a note when you send out a connection request? And I would just, something brief. It's great. And then if you're on mobile, you'd have to click the more button, or sometimes it just shows up as 3 dots, and you would personalize the invite. So if you've identified somebody who's within a company and you're interested in getting their attention, I would personalize your invite. But also just be mindful of not putting too much text in that invite. They probably won't respond to questions that you put in that connection request. You would want to follow up with a subsequent message, and I'll get to that in a second. And please connect with me. I'll post my LinkedIn URL in the chat before we finish. Okay, so back to how are we going to connect with this person, right? And get noticed and ultimately get yourself in the right pile for a job that interests you. So once they accept your connection request, my suggestion to you is to send them a direct message on LinkedIn, asking them if they can spare 5 minutes of their time. You have a few questions that you'd like to ask them about whatever the role is that interests you. Or if there's not even a specific role, but you're just trying to learn about Intel, right? Ask them if they have 5 minutes to spare. You have a couple questions about their experiences at Intel. The biggest mistake that people make when networking on LinkedIn is they ask for too much, or they don't do anything at all, right? So we've already talked about the don't doing anything at all, right? Is people just aren't really using the tool. On the too much side, people will send a message and say something like, can we meet for a virtual coffee? Or I noticed we're in the same city. Can we meet, do you want to meet for coffee or lunch? It's too much. And that's why I always say to my students and my clients, asking somebody for 5 minutes and making yourself available at their schedule convenience, it's hard for someone to say no to that, right? Because you're being very polite and you're simply saying, can I borrow you for 5 minutes to ask you a couple questions? The goal then is you do a good job in those 5 minutes and the conversation goes on longer, right? And you get noticed by them. And again, think about it. Even if that's all you do and they don't even respond, they're going to notice you more than the other 100 people who all they did was apply online. The other thing I want you to think about, here's a quick example, actually. I won't read through this, but you guys can look at this, because sometimes people will say to me, Merryn, I don't know what to say to them when I send out this direct message asking them for 5 minutes. And here's just a quick example for you on how you can be polite and professional and brief and ask them for those 5 minutes. Okay, but that's not all, right? So HR people are definitely going to be active on LinkedIn, and I suggest that for any job that interests you, you're looking for the person in HR who would be responsible for that position. And it does take some digging on LinkedIn, right? Especially if it's a bigger company, you want to figure out what department different people are recruiting for. So that's one of your targets, is the HR person. The other target is the hiring manager, right? So the person you would actually be working for. The HR person will definitely be active on LinkedIn. They may not respond to you, but they'll notice if you send them a message. The hiring manager might not be active on LinkedIn. I find that a lot of people, when they haven't looked for a job in 5 or 10 years, they just aren't even really using LinkedIn, other than they'll just update what their job is and then they don't check it. So that's why I say here, consider transitioning to email. So you can use LinkedIn to find out who your targets are for a role that interests you, and then Google to figure out what the email formula is, right? So if it's Intel, right? So just Google Intel email address, right? Intel email formula. You'll be able to figure out what the email formula is. And I would send them a direct email asking them the same thing, attaching your resume and asking them for 5 minutes. So again, just don't assume that because you've messaged them on LinkedIn that they're going to get that message. They might not be active on the platform. Okay. So that's my suggestion on how to build connections. And I know I'm hitting you guys with a lot here, so thank you for staying with me. We're in the home stretch. The other thing I wanted to touch base on is how to leverage recruiters and connections on LinkedIn. So looking at recruiters, what do most people do? Not much, because they're intimidated by recruiters and they just aren't sure what to do with them. What I suggest you do is actually try to get noticed by recruiters. A lot of times recruiters will get paid if they place you. So a couple tips here. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is excellent. Actually use LinkedIn to search for recruiters who are recruiting in your industry or your functional area. For example, I can go in and I can search for tech recruiters, and I can refine this by city, all sorts of things, right? If I go and look at a recruiter's profile, I promise you that recruiter is going to look at my profile. That's how the platform works, right? So then I suggest direct messaging them, just like the example I showed you. Send them a quick message asking them for 5 minutes of their time. They may not respond, but that's going to help you get noticed. If you're thinking about leveraging your connections, right? So these are people who you already know, right? To help you in your job search. What most people do is they don't do anything. They don't even tell anyone they know that they're looking for a job. Here's what I suggest you do. I suggest that you actually think about people in your network who can help you. Some easy ways to do that, right? So if you have a target company like Intel, let's say, see if anyone in your network currently works there, or has previously worked there, or is connected to one of your targets, right? So maybe the hiring manager or the HR manager. And email your connection and ask them if they would be willing to set up an introduction on your behalf. I find especially international students and international alums, we are more shy, more reserved about asking for help. And in North America, this whole networking thing is such a big part of the job search game. And I want to encourage you to be brave, to reach out to people in your network. I promise you, people want to help you. They just can't read your mind. They don't know what it is you want or how they can help you. So that's very quick networking advice. And if you think about kind of these 10 things that we talked about here, it's a lot. I feel like I need a breath. But even if you only take a few of the things from our session here today, this can really change the way that you're using LinkedIn and help you stand out when you're going to apply for that next job. I'm going to get to questions. Again, I just want to show this slide one more time. Christina, you certainly can invite me back another day. If the feedback is good on this session, there's so much more here to potentially talk about around an interview portfolio. That's step 3. It's something that I really encourage people to consider, going to an interview with more than just a resume. And then there are a lot of things to consider in terms of how you prep for an interview, how you handle it, the preparation and during the interview and after the interview. I have workshops on those topics too. we just really wanted to focus on LinkedIn today for you guys, this being such an important tool. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you got some good tips and are feeling more confident about LinkedIn. I'm going to put my LinkedIn profile URL in the chat, so you guys can definitely connect with me. No judgments on your profile and where it's at. And if you're interested in my book, you can certainly grab a copy of that. Christina mentioned we have put together two promotions, two opportunities for you guys as graduates of Lambton College. And I'll post these in the chat in a minute. I have an online course that we've been able to discount half off for you guys. This is US dollars. So you're welcome to take advantage of that if you want. It's material a lot like this, right? So you can see the topics that I cover. It's 6 hours of content that you can watch on demand, watch what you want, skip what you don't need. Yeah, so that's been a very popular course that I offer. And then I also I spend most of my time doing one-on-one career coaching with people and helping them navigate where they're at in their job search and helping them really put together a plan for how to get to that next step. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I would be happy to help you. And I wanted to offer a discount to you guys. So I have a custom link that I put together for you guys. If you're interested in working with me, I'll post that in the chat as well. Christina, we got through it. I want to leave some time for questions. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And I feel like it was a bit of a race, but we made it.
You made it. It was excellent. Thank you so much. You can drink some water now. Relax a little bit.
Thank you.
It was an amazing webinar. We learned a lot. I really hope you took notes. I did. We live in Canada. We definitely need a LinkedIn profile and we need to stand out. We need to sell ourselves. So we got today lots of tips that you can take. Some things that may be like obvious in a sense, but like personalize your URL. Look for recommendations, link or like or comment conversations from other people in your industry. And what I found amazing, it was the Excels to track the application. That's an amazing tip. So thank you so much. We want you to take advantage of this promotion. So I have already actually, you did it as well.
Just
Merryn.
posted it.
Perfect. I also, I copy as well your URL from LinkedIn, but you go all the information here. You're going to get as well the recording with all these links. I just want to remind you that I believe it's the made to hire one, this promo. It will be only for 5 days, right?
Yes. And actually, I think I just posted it to you. I think you have to share it to the group.
Great. I will be sending that to you in the follow-up email with a recording. And let's go through a couple of questions.
Yes.
What do you think about the looking for a job option?
Oh, I'm so glad that question came up. So here's the thing. That's a controversial one. I will say there are lots of opinions on it. My opinion is putting open to work, that notification on your LinkedIn profile would be like saying open to date on a dating website. So think about that for a minute. If you're active on LinkedIn, I know if I'm a recruiter that I have a fair shot at you, right? So my opinion is when you put the open to work on there, it puts you over the line of to me, it's a little bit more keen than I would like you to be. That's my opinion. Again, you're going to get different opinions on this, but I don't suggest it to my clients.
Okay, great. John wants to have 5 minutes advice with you. I don't know if that's going to be possible. If not, you are getting the discount.
Yes, I suggest you take advantage of the one-on-one coaching discount. I tried to post it in the chat. I don't think it's posting, but Christina's going to email it to everybody. So please, it's valid for the next, if you want to take my course, it's valid for the next 4 days, that discount. And if you want to sign up to work with me one-on-one, that's valid for the next couple weeks. So definitely encourage you to take advantage of that.
Okay, amazing. I already sent you the information as well. You will get it along with the recording. Thank you. It was a great session. Thanks for important information. We have a dot. I'm not sure what do you mean, Ravinder. Let's see if we have more questions. Yeah, John, I believe in this case, it would be great if you can have this session with Merryn, the one-on-one coaching session, take advantage. It's a great opportunity and discount. You will find the prices once you open the link. If you're in Canada, you will find them already $2 Canadian. Let's see if we have more questions. We saw as well that some of the pictures were black and white. Is that recommended as long as the picture is clear?
You know, I don't have a recommendation for black and white. I would just say, you know, use a great picture of you. I prefer color. That example I had there, one of them happened to be black and white, and I put that there just to have the conversation that's fine if you have a great black and white image. I think color is more powerful, but black and white is certainly fine.
Okay, amazing. I believe we do not have more questions. Let's wait an additional moment. Let me copy this information here. You will get all the information tomorrow morning. And I had another question at the beginning of the webinar about the immigration Q&A. So you will need to register for the immigration Q&A. And then it's a question about if you have any questions. So you should write down your question over there. Perfect. I think we do not have more questions. Oh, we do have now. We have here, does company names matter? Previous experience in a small company versus big companies. Yes. And international experience of 8 years and 1 Canadian year. What's your recommendation?
Yeah, great question. So I would say company names do matter. So when I talked about putting companies in the headline, I would really only use that strategy if it's well-known companies. In your about section, that's where I would talk about more so the sort of, if you've worked for a smaller company, that's where I would talk about the sort of work that you were responsible for, the industry that you worked in, rather than listing company names that people aren't going to be familiar with. They'll see those company names in your work experience section, but calling those out isn't going to benefit you in any way. I definitely think talking about global or international experience is a huge advantage. It's funny how many times with my students and clients, I have to pull that out of them because it's almost like they think in Canada or the US that isn't valued. And I don't agree with that at all. I think it's incredibly valued. When you look at how global the nature of business is nowadays, the fact that you have experience from another part of the world, you speak another language or languages, those are things to be proud of, and definitely include that in your profile.
Totally. All right. We have another question here. If we're asked to ask for the salary expectation and assuming that the range is posted, but there is a gap of 20K from the lower, that's quite a lot, from the lower and to the higher end. How do you go about making sure we go for the best offer without sounding like we're asking too much, especially having international experience?
I'm so glad that this question was asked. I love talking about salary. I have a whole workshop on salary negotiation, actually. Okay, so to this question, the short answer is I want you to be able to justify your answer, right? So for example, let's say the salary range is posted at $80,000 to $100,000 and your most recent role was paying in that range, right? So my answer would be based on what I was making in my last role. You know, I'm looking to be you know, at $100,000 a year, right? So don't give them a range. If you give them a range, you are telling them they can offer you the bottom of the range. I would give them an answer that is as high as you can justify, right? And so based on what I was making previously, or based on what I was making plus my most recent degree, you know, my salary expectations are X, right? So give them a firm number. And I find people really are nervous about putting themselves at the high end of the range, but if you can justify it with your experience and your education, do not be nervous. You deserve that. And end of sentence, right? So sometimes people will go on and they'll say, but it's negotiable. No, don't say that. Believe
You're
it,
losing there.
don't give them a range. Yes, we can negotiate later, right? And there are different ways, to negotiate if they're not willing to come up. There are other tactics to use. It's another workshop, but yeah, that's my quick advice.
She has a lot of workshops. If you go through
Oh.
through the website, you will find everything she's done. It is great.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go through another question. If we're applying for multiple roles, what do you put in the headline, or how will you position your headline? How will you
Yeah,
position your headline?
great question. So I would say there are going to be similarities to the roles that you're applying for, right? So they're all going to be related to IT or all related to operations or what, right? So the headline shouldn't change based on different applications. That would be my advice. The headline should work across anything that you're applying for. You don't need to be making a change every time.
Amazing. Do you recommend adding the languages you are proficient at in the headline?
In the headline, I would probably say multilingual or bilingual.
That's great.
That would be what I would do. And then in the about section, I would call out kind of maybe near the bottom, I would say, proficient in, or, it's going to be at the bottom of your profile as well. But if it's something that you think will help you with the sort of roles that you're interested in, then I would definitely call it out, the multilingual or bilingual in the headline. You don't need to call out the specific language, though, I would say.
Amazing. Yeah, it will depend on what you're applying. That may change a little bit. Yeah. We have one more question here. Yeah. When we accepted an offer, but later we got another offer, how do you deal with a situation, specifically if we already started working in the first one?
Oh, this is so tough, and I love it. Well, this is a tough one. I usually deal with that situation personally with somebody, and we talk through the details of it. My short answer would be carefully. So it's going to depend on the circumstances, how much more attractive the second offer is, how much you want it, how, what the relationships are involved. I certainly have advised people to take something after they've taken something else, but we've talked through the details of that. So I can't give a blanket answer on that. It does happen. It is okay for it to happen, but you certainly want to be careful of how you're managing relationships and your reputation if you're going to do that. And it's definitely going to need to be worth it.
Perfect. If I'm the recruiter, is it okay to put the hiring icon on my profile picture?
The hiring icon. Help me understand that question a little bit more, Christine.
He's a recruiter, and this is the photo,
yeah.
looking
for a
job,
and he wants to put the logo there.
I think so. No, I mean the picture that says it's hiring. I believe it's the
I'm hiring one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. You're a recruiter and you put the I'm hiring icon around the circle at your headshot. Yes, yeah. Sure. Absolutely. Recruiters. Yes.
You're free to do whatever you want, right?
You want people reaching out to you. You want people knowing that you're hiring, because that's going to get you more interest from people on LinkedIn. Yes, I definitely agree with that.
All right. And we have the last question for today. Some companies have multiple job openings. If we are applying for different jobs within the same company and tailor our resume and cover letter for each position, is that okay, or does it give if it's given this dishonest?
I understand the question, and it's one I actually get asked quite a bit. I would say be careful, because it's often going to be the same HR person seeing you applying for multiple different roles, and they're going to often, what they tell me is they'll reject that person because they're just throwing out way too much and they don't really know what they want. I would rather you narrow down your focus to 1 or 2 roles in that company and truly go after it. And when I say go after it, right, so it's think about my 5 steps. And I was looking at my book, because there's a process whereby if you're going to go after a job, I really want you doing so much more than just applying online. I want you to actually go after it. And if you do that for 1 or 2 jobs within a company and do it well, that's way more valuable than sending them 10 applications and them going, do they really know what they want? So I would be really careful with that.
Absolutely. I got the book myself as well, and it's amazing. I really
Oh,
recommend it because it has some exercises. So go ahead and read it and practice everything. It's written here is very valuable. I believe we have covered everything for today. It was amazing. We really hope to have you again here, Merryn. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge. It was a great session. We answered all the questions. And we look forward again, as I'm saying, to having you again.
Thank you so much, Christina, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for the wonderful questions and for your time. I really appreciate it and wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. I'll be sending tomorrow morning the recording along with the discounts. I recommend you to take advantage of those discounts. Are really good. And stay warm and safe again. We don't know if we will get more snow later on today. And it's been amazing once again. Thank you to our graduates. Thanks, Merryn, for being here today. And I'll see you soon in our next webinar. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.